Trials Rising. After nearly a year and a half since release, the game is complete, meaning no more DLC or content is planned. I wanted to make this video because I never made a full-on actual review of the game. I avoided doing so because I understood Trials Rising was an evolving title, with fixes, adjustments, and updates constantly being made. I'm going to break up this video into 3 sections: what Trials Rising did well, what it failed at, and what Red Lynx and Ubisoft can do to make the next Trials game a true success. I want this video to be as thorough as possible, which is why it's in this format, and not just me talking off the cuff. I didn't want to forget or gloss over anything. So sit back, grab a cold beverage, put on your riding helmet, and enjoy. There are so many things which Trials Rising did well that people tend to forget about them when complaining about the game. Let's start from the beginning. The game launched with multiplayer right at the start instead of adding it nearly 2 years later like what happened with Trials Fusion. The title screen artwork is incredibly well done, and every time it changed, I loved the quality and polish. In fact, the artwork in general is beautiful. From the individual track posters to the in-game decals, the art team did a fantastic job here. Trials Rising has the best graphics of any Trials game to date. It uses an updated version of the same engine that was in Trials Fusion. The lighting, textures, and effects have all been improved. The University of Trials, featuring Fat Shady, is an excellent tutorial series for helping new players learn the game, easily better than the tutorials in Trials Fusion. Nice job, Professor. This is the first Trials game to feature licensed music, which for the most part I thought fit the game perfectly. I also love the classical music added to Trials. Something about smashing your face into a concrete wall while Beethoven is playing just clicks. The game has over 100 built-in tracks, but Red Lynx didn't sacrifice quality for quantity. There's both. The built-in tracks are of the highest quality and most fun of any Trials game to date in my opinion. As a track creator, I often found myself saying, "Wow, that was awesome, how did they do that?" I really can't commend them high enough for the excellent job they did in this area. Speaking of track creation, they did a lot of work to make this the best version of Trials for builders. For the first time, you can resize objects and place decals, which add infinite possibilities. You can literally create any object you want if you are creative enough to do so. The skybox has a lot more variety than ever before and looks great. Trials Rising includes all of the editor objects of all previous games and their DLC, so the only limit to building is your imagination. Track Central and the leaderboards are all cross-platform. I'm incredibly grateful that they did this because it didn't break up the Trials community like it did whenever Trials Fusion first came out. I can play tracks that other people create regardless of what they built it on and what I'm currently using. Each of the built-in tracks now have bike-specific leaderboards, which is a feature many people have been asking for in Trials since as long as I can remember. This gives players another layer of friendly competition. The Trials Rising DLC consisted of new base world tracks, outfits, animations, and bikes. It did not include editor objects. This was a great thing because it no longer placed user-created tracks on Track Central behind a paywall if they had DLC objects, like in previous titles. The new bikes are all very fun and unique, from the dual-direction King Crab to the massive front-wheeled Tevatron. There's something for everyone. I think my favorite addition, however, would have to be the tandem. For the first time in a Trials game, 2 people can ride the same bike. This leads to some hilarious and unpredictable results. Whoever thought of this bike deserves a medal. A platinum medal. The customization options in Trials Rising have been greatly expanded with various clothing items and accessories available to the player. Another main factor is the ability to place decals on your clothing and bikes. You can customize the look with more freedom than ever before, and truly make your own totally unique look. I love it. One final thing is that the commercials for this game were really fantastic. They did a great job with the live-action Trials rider. Good stuff. After that last segment, you'd think Trials Rising is the best game of all time. Unfortunately, it's not. This next segment is going to churn up all the bad things that Rising did. Some of the things mentioned in this segment have turned many players away from the game entirely. The numbers don't lie. Trials Rising is the worst-selling modern entry in the franchise by far. Trials HD, which was an Xbox 360 exclusive, sold 3 million copies as a digital download. Trials Evolution sold 1.9 million copies, not including Trials Evolution Gold on PC. Trials Fusion sold 1.7 million copies across all platforms, and Trials Rising has sold approximately 610,000 copies across all platforms. This is significantly lower than the previous entries in the series. Now, I know low sales don't necessarily mean the game is bad, but it could be used as a gauge to help determine what went wrong, and why overall interest in the game was lower than the previous titles. Firstly, the game was plagued by numerous bugs at launch, many of which revolved around connection issues to Ubisoft's servers, which led to things like item duplication or even deletion. Other bugs crashed the game entirely. It crashed the game! Your FPS track crashed the game. I have to relaunch it. What is happening? B, cancel. Loading. We're loading. Yeah, let's do that. Let's press B. The game crashed. Eventually, these bugs were addressed through a combination of server-side fixes and game updates, but with adequate testing and development time, they should have not been present at all. The game at launch almost felt like a beta release, that it should have spent another couple of months in development. Another massive issue that still affects the game to this day is randomly, the game's frame rate will sputter out. You'll go from a smooth 60 frames per second down to 10 without warning, just for a moment before it returns to normal again. This occurs on at least the standard Xbox One and PS4 consoles. This can lead to infuriating moments that ruin an otherwise perfect run. What's worse is that these events are totally unpredictable. In addition to this, it seems like many tracks were built on powerful hardware, like an Xbox One X or PC, and when you play the same track on a standard Xbox One or PS4, you get screen tearing and frame rate drops. This really kills the experience in my opinion and should definitely not be happening on any of the built-in tracks, regardless of the console. The game has some major loading issues, at least on the standard Xbox One and PS4 consoles. Take a look at this clip of the title screen loading sequence. It's sped up 4 times and is still painfully long. Once the game finally loads, a full minute and a half later, you can go into Track Central and play some user-created tracks, only to be greeted with a slow, clunky interface that's cumbersome and awkward to use, and the track thumbnails can take an unusually long time to load, despite being noticeably low resolution. Sometimes they don't even load at all, as shown in this clip. I'm going to be brutally honest, I hate Track Central in Trials Rising. It's the worst Track Central design of the 3 previous Trials games. You probably didn't expect me to say it, but it's true. I love playing user-created tracks and seeing how talented and creative the community is, but I very much dislike Track Central itself. It's just a mess. Take the trending feed, for example. It's not clear what I'm looking at, what algorithm dictates which tracks appear here, and what are the requirements. It's unclear. In addition, many times you'll enter the feed only to see different tracks than what appear on the main Track Central screen. Here's an example. In this clip, you can see the top 4 tracks in the trending Trials tracks feed, but when you enter the feed, suddenly my newest track, Mississippi Muddin', appears as the top track in the feed, but you wouldn't know it from the first screen. Why are there discrepancies and loading problems almost a year and a half after the game's been released? The UI of Track Central is just plain bad. I haven't seen one person who loves it. Roughly 40% of the screen at all times is occupied by one track's information. Without selecting a track, you can see the full thumbnail, creator information, description, release date, ratings, difficulty, and tags. When you do select it, you see all that information again. It's redundant and not well thought out. The engagement level in Track Central is also quite low when compared to the number of players who actively play the main game. Why is this? Because players have absolutely zero incentive to play user-created tracks. Trials Rising puts so much emphasis on gaining levels to earn loot boxes, gear crates, and completing contracts to earn gold or even acorns. Players can't earn any of that in Track Central, so many casual players don't visit it at all. The title screen location is also not prominent. You'd think that for a piece of the game that offers players tens of thousands of new tracks to play for free would be more predominantly featured. Another thing, remember the really cool bike-specific leaderboards I mentioned earlier? Yeah, they're not available on user-created tracks. Track Central gets the shaft once again. And at the very least, this feature should be implemented for the best hand-picked Track Central tracks if it can't be available for all of them. Think of Trials Rising as a large, sprawling mansion, with the title screen being the foyer. Each built-in track its own fully furnished room with large windows. Track Central is the closet where you put the vacuum cleaner. Okay, I'm done ripping on Track Central for now. It was just a huge missed opportunity. Loot boxes are incredibly annoying. Was anyone really excited to hear that loot boxes containing random, worthless items were going to be included in Trials Rising? Didn't think so. They don't add anything of value to the game and only serve as a vehicle for players to purchase more using real money for a chance to receive a rare item. This is not what Trials is about, and the whole gear crate system cheapens the experience. Instead of actually playing the game, players are opening their crates and going through their inventory to figure out what items they don't care about so they can sell them to get more gold to buy something else they do want. The whole system is exhausting and cumbersome, and not what makes Trials a fun game. Now on to the topic of acorns. To put it bluntly, acorns are a scam. Let me explain. Let's say you purchase the base game of Trials Rising at $19.99, which in my opinion is a good deal. Then you want to buy one of the new bikes. Let's say you really like the King Crab. All DLC bikes cost 45 acorns in a game that already has another form of currency in the form of gold. Well, guess what? You can't buy exactly 45 acorns. Your least expensive option is to buy a 30-pack of acorns for $5 and then two 10-packs at $2 each. After that, you can finally get the new bike, but then you just spent 50% of the cost of the entire game on one item. That's excessive in my opinion. The game uses acorns so that you have to buy in large packs and always have some left over, no matter what you buy. This forces you to either have some that you'll never use, or you can buy more so that you can get another bike or track pack, or you can spend them on bike frames or other cosmetic items. I feel like I'm at a carnival that scams you out of your money. You have to spend $50 in tickets to win a stuffed bear worth $25, and then you have a handful of tickets left over. Trials used to be a game that took pride in its simplicity. It's easy to learn, hard to master gameplay. Trials Rising seems to put that out of view in favor of acorn bundles, inventory management, and contract completion. Alright, enough of that. Let's talk about the game UI. It's terrible. Instead of simple track selection menus, players are forced to use a world map to select a track, where they have to navigate a cluster F of track icons in order to play. You can deploy several filter options to more easily locate a track, but the whole interface is cumbersome. If you're looking at a track in Australia and want to play something in North America, you have to scroll past the entire world first. Sure, you can get pretty quick at doing this using the map interface, but it seems unnecessary and doesn't add anything to the Trials experience in my opinion. There are also times where there are several track icons overlapping each other, making you have to zoom in further to select the track you want to play instead of the track the game decided to put on top. With Trials Rising taking place in real-world location, it severely limits the creativity of the level design team. I would have loved to have seen what they could have come up with if there were no limits. Maybe a Dreamscape 2, cyberpunk samurai setting, shape-shifting landscape? All of these ideas would not work in the setting Trials Rising is forced to take place in, and this is a missed opportunity. Trials Fusion introduced the idea of teams, where you could join with other people to compete against other teams' track runs. This was a cool feature, and although I personally didn't care too much for it, other people are quite upset that this was stripped away with Rising. When Trials Rising was being developed, Ubisoft and Red Lynx enlisted the help of several well-known Trials players and called them the Trials Elite. They were here to help shape the development and direction of the game to the best of my knowledge. My question is, what did they actually do? Where were they when Red Lynx decided to put Track Central in a closet? Where were they when the built-in tracks ran terribly? Where were they when the god-awful UI was being developed? Where were they when the cumbersome inventory system was being developed? What did the Trials Elite actually do? I'm not trying to be a jerk here, I really just want to know how big of a role they played in shaping this game. It doesn't seem like they played a very big one, if any. Well, that's the end of my epic rant/complaining session. Now what can we do to fix all of this? That last segment might seem like I just wanted to hate on the game. In reality, I love Trials and truly want the game to succeed on every level. Everything I mentioned should be taken as a piece of constructive criticism. The next Trials game has to bring it back to the basics, to emphasize what made Trials such a fun game to play to begin with. To start off, there shouldn't be a Nintendo Switch port. Sorry Switch fans. The problem is that Red Lynx tried to do so much with Trials Rising that it seems their staff and budget were spread thin. I believe it was a waste of time and resources trying to optimize the Switch version. The Switch is easily the least powerful platform which Trials Rising is on, and it shows. The game runs at half the frame rate as the other versions, and many of the built-in tracks have reduced scenery. To streamline development of the next Trials game, I would recommend sticking with PlayStation, Xbox, and PC at most. Secondly, ditch the Acorn currency system altogether. I'm not against DLC, but the way it was handled in Trials Rising is an abomination. The DLC bikes were outrageously priced. I'd suggest being upfront and honest about the pricing of additional content. Just charge the exact cost of the item. DLC bikes should be available for $2.99 each, period. Not 45 acorns, not doing 600 backflips and wheeling for 23 kilometers on certain tracks. $2.99. All DLC should have a straight price, no confusion, no acorns. The inventory system as it exists now should be completely scrapped. Here's a thought: give players 90% of the clothing items right from the start. This would allow players to customize their look right away. Unlocking the remaining items should have clear requirements. For example, completing your first extreme track, download and rate 10 user-created tracks in Track Central, earn 5 platinum medals, etc. Red Links could still come out with new items to wear as DLC and charge an honest price for them, and it would fit into this new structure with no problems. No selling duplicate items, no random loot boxes, no confusion. I would also make sure the built-in tracks run at a buttery smooth 60 frames per second on the weakest platform, and then optimize accordingly. If the Switch version hadn't been made, more focus could have been placed on making sure the base Xbox One and PS4 consoles didn't encounter any performance issues. The UI needs to be scrapped as well. Currently, the Home tab consists of advertisement for DLC and options. Then you have to go to the next tab to select the game mode. This screen contains 3 different types of multiplayer modes, with Track Central being tucked into the farthest corner. Who designed this nonsense? It would have made more sense with this layout to have 3 large columns to select from: Race, Multiplayer, and Track Central. When I first loaded up Trials Rising, I honestly thought, this can't be the final layout. Surely it'll be updated so it's not so clunky. That moment never came. What I'd recommend is an initial splash screen when the game loads, with one message. It can be an advertisement for a new DLC bundle or whatnot. Players can hit a button to go to the bundle or press another button to enter the title screen. The title screen would ideally consist of the following options: Tutorial, Core Tracks, Track Central, Multiplayer, Customize, Store, Track Editor, Leaderboards, and Options. No redundancy, no confusion, no clutter. Just Trials. I came up with the idea for this UI layout after 3 minutes of thinking while sitting on my couch. Speaking of UI, Track Centrals needs to be rebuilt from the ground up. Here's what I would suggest. You enter Track Central. The top row has a header that reads Staff Picks, with a horizontal row of track thumbnails. Each row would feature 6 tracks with a box on the far right that reads See More. Selecting this would take you to a screen full of track thumbnails for that specific feed. Selecting a thumbnail would then take you to the full track screenshot with all the details. No more wasted space. The main screen would have other built-in feeds. Top Trials tracks in the last 48 hours, Top Trials tracks this week, Top Trials tracks this month, New Creations. This feed would contain Trials tracks and skill games. Top Skill Games the last 48 hours, Top Skill Games in the last week, Top Skill Games this month. After that would be 4 different boxes to select, taking you to that feed. Downloaded tracks, favorites, recently played, and friends liked. The very bottom row would consist of up to 6 different custom feeds that players could create for Ninja tracks specifically or for a certain creator. It would be more like Trials Fusion in this area. This would be a much more simplified and streamlined approach to Track Central that would allow players to have immediate access to the feeds they want while also seeing user-created tracks the moment they enter. It would be better than Trials Rising's Track Central in every way. Also, please, improve the caching and indexing of thumbnails for God's sakes. Maybe the initial screen of Track Central's thumbnails can be cached before it takes the players there. I know I've spent a lot of time talking about Track Central in this video, but I think it's vitally important to the enjoyment and lifespan of Trials. I mean, why wouldn't a developer want to promote the hell out of a feature of your game that gives players endless free content? Ditch the level system. It literally has no point. It doesn't communicate how good a player is to anyone else. Lots of games have level systems that don't need it just for the sake of being like other games. Instead, players should have a writer card attached to their name, connected to their Ubisoft account presumably. The card would show their stats, similar to the player profile screen in Trials Rising, but it would have even more information in regards to Track Central, including number of tracks rated and tracks shared. You could earn badges to place on your profile by meeting certain requirements if you want to spice things up a little bit. Well, that about wraps everything up. There's a cliche saying, 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. Trials Rising is the exact embodiment of this saying. Great in some ways, but terrible in others. I just hope Red Links can learn from their missteps and make the next game a true masterpiece worthy of the Trials name. Thank you for watching this video. Please like and share it to get the word out. Is there anything I missed in any of these sections? Do you disagree with anything that I mentioned? What would you change in the next Trials game? I'll see you next time, writers.